So, welcome to the show. We are meeting after a gap of around 10 days, and I have a great pleasure to introduce to you our guest, Dr. Marty Nemko, and who has written 16 books, and he is a personal and career coach, and he has seen more than 6,000 clients and helped them. So, it's going to be an interesting discussion, Marty. Welcome to the show.
My pleasure, Niraj.
Yeah. So today's agenda is, as this channel will be discussing about mental health and predominantly cognitive therapy and REBT and how it can help people to change and be more productive. Marty has an interesting take on this with his vast experience with people, and it will be great if he shares some of those insights with us. So, as we start, first I would like to divide this discussion. First part would be defining REBT and cognitive revolution and how it can help. Then, Marty, probably you can add some of the critique and some of the limitations which you think are of this therapy. And then the next, what is a way out? If these are the limitations, what way out you suggest? What is a way forward for personal change? How does that sound, Marty?
Very good.
Great. So, as you are aware, but to our viewers, rational emotive behavior therapy is the pioneering cognitive therapy. And the main premise of this approach is that situation does not create emotions, but it's rather our thinking, our attitude, our philosophy of life that creates emotion. And when it comes to disturbed emotions, it is thinking in terms of demands. The dysfunctional thinking is in terms of demand. And to change our disturbing emotion, it is very important that we change our thinking. So that is a basic premise of REBT. Another important aspect of REBT is that only this insight that situation does not create our emotions and we have to change our thinking. Only this insight is not sufficient, but it requires rigorous work and practice to change our gestalt towards life, to create a new attitude in our life, to make effective change in our emotions. And then once we do that, probably it can also help us to be more productive, uh, to help us achieve our goals more efficiently, and all those things which will come after that. But the most important thing is that it's our thinking. And the other important aspect is REBT is not a silver bullet, where if you just have an insight that our thinking creates our emotions, and then you are done, you are through. That's not the case. Another important aspect is even though REBT predominantly focuses on thinking, it is multimodal, which means it also focuses on the emotions, it also focuses on the behavioral part, how to work on your behavior, how to work on your emotions, and how to work on your thinking. So these are kind of three pillars on which you have to work depending on your personality type, because sometimes some people are more of intellectual kind, some are more emotional, some wants to make change through behavior. So depending on your personality type, you have to work on all these three angles and then move forward. Another important point with REBT is REBT accepts human fallibleness. REBT accepts that all of us are going to be imperfect, fallible. So REBT doesn't claim to give you complete nirvana, if I have to put that phrase. So this is in a nutshell what I can explain about REBT. And now I would like to hear Marty's thoughts on about some of his critique and what he thinks about the cognitive revolution and about Albert Ellis' work in REBT and all that.
I think that the core principle of REBT and cognitive behavioral therapy, which is to eliminate the musts. You would love to meet a wonderful woman, or you would like to stop taking drugs, but it's not like you must. It's a very nice concept. It's a useful concept. I also like the concept of correcting erroneous thinking. If you're irrationally catastrophizing or irrationally thinking something is too likely to occur, or you're overgeneralizing, I'm a loser, I'm a total loser, that's a useful technique. But at least across my 6,000 clients and my reading, that is but one set of solutions to a person's malaise, whether it's depression or anger or anxiety or substance abuse or overeating. I like to think that I have many more tools, and every client is different. For some clients, the focusing on REBT, CBT, those kind of things is enough. But I would say for most people, it's either no solution or partial solution. So I'll give you an example. The most traditional example of where it would be inadequate is sometimes, not always, but occasionally, a person may have had something terrible happen in their past. They were raped, their husband was mean and cheated on them, their parents ignored them, whatever. And they keep, before they can move on, I'm not going to let them talk about it for 2 sessions, but I do need to let them emotionally give it up so they can move forward. That's a little bit different than correcting their erroneous thinking. It's a purely emotion-based thing. Other than that, sometimes people are impulsive. Another tool is some people go from 0 to 60 in 1 second. They go from calm to angry in 1 second. And getting them aware of the moment of truth and saying, invoking the wise one within you, breathe, ask yourself, what would the wise one within you do? That can be a useful tool. Sometimes people's problems are not within themselves. Much of the assumption within REBT is that it's, you need to correct yourself, it's about you. But sometimes we are affected by our children, by our romantic partners, by our parents, by our bosses, by all kinds of other people, sometimes even a cousin, it may not even, who we feel like we're jealous of or whatever. So understanding the sociogram, understanding the other players that are involved can help us move forward. And those are a few. I'm sure there's a million other techniques that I use that I can't identify just top of my head, but this gives you an idea that REBT is good. I'm not anti-REBT, I'm not against CBT, but it's a tool. And the really good, not just therapist, but counselor, friend, has many tools in their toolkit if they want to be helpful to a relatively large number of people.
Great. So interesting point, Marty. Now I would like to focus on 2 specific points which you raised, and one is where you gave one example of an individual who had a horrific experience, okay, or maybe a catastrophe in his life, and you said that you will deal with him, probably a session you will give him for just emote, is a kind of catharsis.
Not a whole session, even it could be 3 minutes.
Yeah.
1 minute.
Yeah. So kind of catharsis, which is according to you is required. So now the question, sometimes, yeah. Now the question is, once that is done, what is the next step? Because at some level you will move forward, because I don't think REBT specifically discourages that catharsis in the first session. Some REBT therapists may encourage people to have that catharsis, have that emoting out. But then once they do that, they come to the fundamental aspect of how to change their gestalt or philosophy towards looking at the typical bad event which happened in their life.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so my question is, what is your criticism in that regard?
Because it's not necessary, it may not be necessary to correct their erroneous thinking where it's not musts and shoulds, it's not. Sometimes it's a matter of saying, okay, one of my favorite, again, million techniques is I don't have them write ABCs, must, should. I say, I want you, we all have a wise one within us, and we have an idiot within us. And I say, what would the wise one, if she's a feminist here in America, every woman's a feminist. What would the goddess within you do? I'm not asking them to analyze their erroneous thinking, we're corrected. Because very often they know in their heart. And then after they say, what I really need to do is I need to put myself out there. Then I would say, okay, that's a good goal. What's the first baby step? What does the goddess within you think is realistic for you and that you're motivated to do? Is it to update your Tinder profile? Is it to call your friend to get set up? Is it to go dancing? What would be the wisest thing that you feel motivated to do? So, of course, you're absolutely right. I'm not, even if it's somebody who has been raped 10 times, I'm not going to stay there because all that does is it reinforces their backward thinking. But I'm not going to necessarily jump to, okay, where's your erroneous thinking? What's your musts? What's your shoulds? I'm going to say, sometimes I'll say, what was the goddess say you should do? Or I'll say, is it too early to do something? Maybe you're not ready to do something. Should you just be for a while? And they usually say no, they want to move forward. I have a million questions that help them moved forward, but only occasionally does musts and shoulds and REBT, erroneous thinking, become the dominant next step.
Yeah. So here I have a question because I have a hunch this is one of the objection which is raised against REBT, and probably you can give your take on this. That REBT is more problem focused because it's wrestling with the problem all the time. In the sense that if a person has a horrific experience, it will try to convince that person or ask him to look at the reality that it is not horrible, it is not terrible, the event, whatever happened. And instead of this, you are talking about a different approach, which is more about once you understand the problem, once you have that catharsis, why not move towards what you want in life? Why not move towards solution? So in nutshell, is this something what you're talking about is instead of being problem focused, trying to wrestle the problem to the ground, you are talking about, yes, this is a problem. Let's look at the brighter side. Let's look at the solution and move towards it slowly.
I almost never wrestle. But it is very much problem focused. Somebody doesn't have a job. They're a drug addict. They're depressed, whatever. So let's take depression because it's so common. So I'll say, okay, the kind of thing I will do is I'll say, depression is usually caused by multiple things, not one. A genetic predisposition, some early childhood, some parental things, failures in life, professionally or personally, incorrectly low self-esteem. And I will say, here, make a pie chart, whether we're on Zoom or in person. Here's a circle. Everybody is different. Divide up this pie into your causes of your depression. And then based on their pie chart, I then say, and I may not even take the biggest chunk of the pie first. I say, does the goddess within you, which one of these do you think it's worth our starting to work on? And nowhere you hear is any in this musts and shoulds. If it's genetics, maybe we need to talk about drugs, or we need to talk about putting yourself in an environment where you're less likely to be depressed. Some people are best when they're very busy. Doesn't correct any of their musts and shoulds or whatever, falsely erroneous thinking. They're happy, they're less depressed when they're busy. Others, when they slow down. Everybody is different, but you see how there's so many tools to be effective with a wide range of people.
Yeah.
That's my problem with REBT.
Yeah. So I just want to articulate what I have understood from your explanation, and just correct me if I'm wrong. What I have understood is that you are trying to convey that REBT is too boxed, too formula oriented, whereas to address different emotional problems, you have to be lucid, you have to go with the flow, you have to be flexible in terms of using the technique as per the client's requirement. Is that what you are trying to convey?
Pretty close.
Yeah.
Flexibility is a good word. The word one size does not fit all. A variation on that is I always use an experimental mindset, meaning I'll try one approach. If it doesn't work, I'll change. I have all these tools in my toolkit. It's like if you went to a car mechanic and all he had was a saw, you'd be very scared, or a spark plug wrench. He has to have a lot of tools. I have an experimental mindset. From the moment I talk to a client, the first second, I'm watching their body language. How scared are they? Do I need to start by joking around for a few minutes to get them calmed down? Do I need to offer them coffee? Do I need to let them talk? Or they really rather I take the lead? I'm constantly experimenting, and I'm watching and I'm listening. I'm watching even to the way they breathe. I watch some people when they're nervous, they hide it in their face, but their feet shake, their knee shakes. I'm watching everything, and I will experiment, always experiment, and go with more with what works and less of what doesn't. One more thing. My homework is very effective. My client, I almost always end the session and say, okay, let's summarize. What do you want to remember from today's session? She says it. And I record every session, by the way. And then I say, okay, in light of what you've said in the summary, what would the wise man or the wise woman within you give yourself as a homework assignment that you wouldn't procrastinate, that you want to do, that you'd be eager to do? Now, that could be anything from journaling about their childhood, to talking to their husband, to throwing out the fattening foods in the, to going taking dance classes. So that's core also. Very flexible, giving power to the client to choose homework. Because if you just focus on what's in the session, that's 1 hour. There are 168 hours in a week. I want my client, not all the time, but I want my client to be doing stuff during the week so that she comes back having made progress and therefore is more motivated to keep making more progress.
Yeah, that makes sense. In fact, REBT advocates, I think REBT was the first therapy which advocated the importance of homework. So REBT basically advocates that. But now the point which we are taking forward is that a formalistic, boxed in approach sometimes may not work. You need that flexibility. That's what you are saying. And it makes sense. But the next question is, there is a downside to that also, because being an eclectic approach, if you are following that approach, then the next question is, what model of therapy you have for people to help? Because you are going, yeah. So my question is, hello.
Yeah.
My question is, then, do you have a structure? Do you have a theory of human disturbance and solution to it? Or you want to look at different aspects, different tools, and use it as per the requirement?
Yeah, I think it's dangerous to start out with a model that you are something. I like to think that I'm being really honest. I'm a pretty smart guy, and I can think on my feet, and I can observe, and I'm very responsible. So I do have a new client questionnaire, but it too is every one of my new clients fills out a new client questionnaire, which is very probing. It takes an hour, which I review in advance of the session. And that teaches me where to go. But nobody can ever say, oh, Marty Nemko is this therapist, that therapist. And I do avoid, however, being a dilettante, that is, not being expert at anything. I do not believe in Freudian psychotherapy. So I am not an expert in that, nor do I want. I don't believe in long-term therapy. I believe that's disempowering. So I've not studied that. I'm not a spiritualist, so I'm not going to do mindfulness. So it's not like I just try to be excellent at everything. There are a few things, and I've described them, I think, pretty accurately, the range of things that I do, so that I'm not just, it's not like I'm a beginner at everything. I have a lot of experience in these half a dozen or 8 different or 10 approaches, And I am flexible from the beginning before they even show up because of the questionnaire that I send them that they have to spend an hour on, and I review in advance.
Yeah. So, in terms of, you just said that 8 to 10 approaches you are familiar with, and you use them according to the client requirement. So, can you able to label them? Like, if REBT is not working, what kind of different approaches you use?
It's hard to say. The labeling is not so good. It may be 20. Maybe I can't say it's a label. I'd
Mm-hmm.
rather demonstrate.
Mm-hmm.
You make believe you're my client.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Come to me with a problem. Well, do you mind role playing? Are you good at role playing?
Yeah. So, let's talk about phobia. Somebody
Okay,
may,
great.
yeah. So somebody have a issue with phobia, and probably he has a phobia of dogs.
Great.
So yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Okay, you be the client. You're phobic. I'm going to be the counselor.
yeah.
First of all,
So, hi Marty. My issue is that whenever I see a dog on the road, I get frightened, and I want to avoid, and I'm a bit obsessed about it.
I am delighted you came to me, both because there have been many studies that show that phobias are the easiest kind of problem to fix. I know you've been struggling with it a long time, but we will, in a fairly short amount of time, make real progress with this. But I
Great.
need to start by understanding, Niraj.
Mm-hmm.
How do you recall when you first were afraid of dogs?
I think it was in my childhood when I was bitten by one of the dog, and that,
Ah,
yeah,
wow. Well, that makes sense.
yeah.
And were you by yourself, or were your parents with you when you were bitten by the dog?
No, I was at somebody else's place.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
And what was the reaction of other people? How badly were you bitten, first of all?
Uh, Not that badly, but it was more of a psychological horror I created for myself.
It was scary, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
can certainly understand that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and were there other people, were at somebody else's house? Did the parents or whatever, did they freak out, or no? Or was it really mainly within you?
Not like that. It was me who was more, because then I had to go and take those injections and all that.
Oh no, real? Did you have to get rabies shots?
Yeah.
Oh, those are painful, I hear.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I could understand why you'd be scared.
Yeah.
Now, I imagine you've tried for a long time. You're an adult now, and this happened when you were a child.
Yeah.
So I could understand why that would be scary. What
Mm-hmm.
have you done to try to get over it?
Uh, Probably I tell myself intellectually that all dogs don't bite, and even if they bite, it is not going to be the end of the world. I will not die,
Okay.
and I will take maximum precaution to make sure that I don't get beaten again.
Okay. Now I notice I'm hearing the RBT and those kind of concepts. But so you say you take maximum precautions.
Uh-huh.
When you're taking maximum precautions,
Mm-hmm.
that can also increase your anxiety. I'm just testing the waters here. If I said to you that from now on, whenever you see a dog and he's close to you, you're going to ask the owner, is it safe? Is this dog is the dog vicious or whatever? And
Mm-hmm.
that way, with the reassurance, you can be a little calmer. And that's what's called desensitization.
Mm-hmm.
Little by little, I'm not putting you in danger. I don't want you ever bitten again. I really don't. But by asking the owner, is it okay? Is the dog okay? And you get if the dog says, oh no, go to the other side of the street. That's reasonable precaution. Now, eventually, you won't have to ask the owner. You'll just keep your distance and you'll be able to see if the dog is wagging his tail, he's looking happy, he's not growling. But for starters, I'm asking, I'm not telling, because everybody is different. Do you think that as an exercise for the next day or two, every time you see a dog and you're feeling scared, of course, if it's growling and you don't want to, nobody would want to be near that dog. But if it looks like it's a normal, nice dog, and there's an owner there, I don't know if this is in Kolkata where they're all roaming the streets, but if it's with an owner, and the dog doesn't look mean, not crying, how do you feel about trying this experiment of asking the owner, is the dog okay?
Yeah. So one point here I want to add is that is what I'm doing, because in India we have an issue of stray dogs. So I'm not much frightened nowadays with the own dog, because they are with the leash. So I don't have any issue with that. It is sometimes with the stray dogs who follow you and all that stuff happens. So in that regard I'm bit conscious. But I think now I have fairly overcome this fear. But still, sometimes that old thing is there whenever I am going, probably coming on my motorbike in the night, and yeah, and there are stray dogs around. I am little watchful. Okay, and sometimes it also happens that they chase me.
Okay.
Okay. So in that case, I get frightened for a moment, but then it subsides. So that is how practically I try to solve the problem.
And that, from what you're saying, that doesn't sound like a problem. Anybody would be a little scared if you're on your motorbike and this dog is chasing you. He could hit you. He could knock you over. So, is it possible you don't have a problem? I'm asking. I'm not
Yeah,
telling.
yeah. So, problem in the sense what I'm trying to convey, that I'm way more conscious than probably my wife or probably some of my friends. I'm way more conscious than them. It is not something which is keeping me obsessed whole day, but I am way more conscious. So it is not a big problem, but probably if I can uh, reduce it further, that's what I am looking for.
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit. So, I would be upset. I think any reasonable person, if a dog is chasing you and you could potentially hit you, anybody, even if your wife is less nervous, that's appropriate. Where does your anxiety go beyond what seems reasonable? In what circumstances?
What seems reasonable, it is going just beyond, because I am bit more frightened than my people around me, but I have made peace with it. So I have a higher anxiety in with dogs compared to other people, and I'm okay with that. So I think in that sense, if you say, I don't have a problem.
I want to get the context. If there's a stray dog and it's just walking along, you're on your feet, on foot, or you're with the motorbike, and the dog is 6 feet away and he's not growling and he's just walking. Are you scared?
Yeah, so sometimes I avoid the road.
Let's talk about that.
Mhm.
So, is the following, and I'm just going to, again, I'm testing, I'm experimenting. Is it possible that all you need to do is to do this very simple thing? This dog is not clearly, he's not growling, his tail is not down, he's walking. Breathe and just distract yourself. It's a ritual. The dog does not look menacing. Breathe. It's not for childhood. Distract. Think about your gulab jamun or something like that, right? Do something. If I just said, assess, is this dog seem vicious? If no, breathe, distract. Now, you could say, Marty, that's not going to work at all. Or you could say, that's worth trying. Or you could say, that feels. What does the honest Niraj feel about that possible strategy?
I think that's a valuable suggestion, because out of 10 times, probably I applied 2 times. So with your input now, probably I can increase the number of times I give it a shot of distracting and going through that road whenever I see a stray dog.
And what happens is, like any new habit,
Mhm.
the more you do it, the more your brain is trained to make that the automatic response. In the beginning, it's going to be a very studied, deliberate response. But after a while, it'll get more frequent. And even if it's not perfect all the time, you will have brought your anxiety down to a level where there are more important things to think about. Now, I'm not saying that's the solution. We're going to do something very funny now that you're not expecting. We have been very intellectual about this process, and you've come up with a plan that you think is good. But I want to get us out of our intellectual headspace. I'm going to play the piano for a minute. and you are going to ground yourself and get in touch with how you're really feeling as to whether this experiment is worth trying. Are you willing to let me do that for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
You can close your eyes, you can breathe, whatever you want to do, but all you are is to get in touch with how you're feeling about this plan that we have concocted for as an experiment. All right. I'm even going to, for the audience here, I'm going to turn the webcam to the keyboard so you can see the keyboard. You're only going to see my back, but what the hell? What difference does it make? Anyway, here we go. And I created this little piece for this very purpose. I do this with my clients all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll stop the role play. But this gives you a sense of how many different kind of techniques I use.
Yeah.
Okay, Niraj, what are you really feeling about this experimental idea?
Yeah, it is quite interesting. In fact, yeah, I would like you to come on the screen. Yeah. So it was interesting. In fact, I when you were playing the piano, I made my resolve to go through with the exercise, and I was seeing myself completely free from the phobia, whatever left within me. So thank you very much. It was interesting.
I'm very happy. That's great.
Yeah.
So, what now? We're out of the role play.
Mhm.
I'm assuming that whoever is going to be listening to this is primarily a therapist, maybe even an REBT therapist.
Yeah.
What if anything of value came from the role play itself that might be useful for either people thinking about getting therapy or people who are therapists?
Yeah, I think it uh, underlines your same proposition that only thinking intellectually or only having a formalistic outlook towards helping people doesn't work. Sometimes you have to apply different techniques, and techniques which will take people from their head to their heart, or maybe at the emotional level, and that can effect a change, is my understanding. What do you think?
And yet scrupulously practical.
Yeah.
All these things, what would work for you? And I tried different things. And you said, no, it's not. It's only when not on the leash. And that was, and I immediately let it go. We kept trying, experiment, try. And then I empower you. Is this going to work for you or no? So it's and it wasn't allowing a whole session of emotions. No way. We did this in 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But
Interesting.
many techniques.
Yeah. So I think let's summarize your critique of REBT is you are against a kind of a fanatic REBTism, probably we can name it, that it's a solution to everything, and probably even though they don't claim that it's a solution to everything, they apply a strict manual which you are kind of not for. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
One size does not fit all.
Yeah.
There's an old saying in America that says, to a hammer, everything is a nail. Not everything is a nail.
Yeah. Interesting. So now I would like to move to the next part, which is I would like you to share your experience with helping so many people. Some of the what I can say, a formula for personal change, some of the basic guidelines which you have seen working. Although I completely accept your point that everybody is different, but a common phenomena, a kind of a common denominator, which you will be able to share with our viewers about two parts which are important. One is letting go of the human disturbance, which is anxiety, depression, anger, and all that, and then moving towards more fulfilling life. If we consider these two as pillars, what would be your recipe with your experience of working with so many individuals?
Again, of course, anything would be reductionistic, but two things do pop out.
Mm.
One is something that requires me to be very humble, and that
Mm.
is, I do believe that we are at least half genetic. Everything in our personality, everything is genetic.
Mhm.
So I usually don't try to make radical changes in people, because that would make me heroic if I did it, but I don't believe it happens most of the time. So I have a healthy respect for people's genetics, point one. Point two, I guess I am ambivalent. I'm not a big believer in the follow your passion rule,
Mm.
because I'm a career counselor. Because most people's career passions are in one of just a few areas: sports, environmentalism, fashion, entertainment, movies, news broadcast, those few things. And because of that, the supply of people who want to be in that, actors, musicians, artists, there is counselors, therapists, there's zillions of them. And so it's very difficult to make a living at it. And so you end up getting rejected and failing, and you can't even pay your rent. So follow your passion and you may starve. So yes, if my client is inordinately talented, driven, and connected, they have the luxury of following their passion. But people who are more typical, I would be guilty of malpractice if they said, I want to be the next Oprah, I want to be a talk show host, but they're just not that bright or that interesting, etc. So I am a realist. I understand the power of genetics, the power of supply and demand, and I help strike a balance between people's native best strengths and the marketplace. So that's a very different. Most career counselors is follow your passion, do what you love, the money will follow. I don't believe that after 6,000 clients.
Interesting.
I've
Anything
also,
else?
yes, of course. There's always, I have always things. I believe that, on the other hand, that too many people choose careers for status and money, both of which are false gods. They are not Shiva. They're my mother's name is Siva, by the way.
Oh.
Yeah. I have many rich clients, and many of them are very unhappy. And money may buy you a fancier neighborhood or a nice car and nice jewelry and even a trophy wife. But that does not make enduring happiness. No, poverty is very difficult, no good. But beyond a middle class living, you're probably not going to be happier. And you're going to be doing, very often you get paid a lot of money to do stuff that isn't very fun. Fighting as a lawyer, being an investment banker, doing all the stuff that you don't really like, selling insurance, being a CPA. So I encourage people to not be unduly materialistic, especially since in America, you lose more than half of your income, above middle class income, to taxes. So even your lifestyle is not going to be that improved. So another thing I deeply believe is to not, yes, aim to be a middle class income, but beyond, you're paying too big a price in terms of your quality of life. Right. And the other unusual, and this is, I don't tell this to most of my clients because it's just so contrary to the conventional wisdom. I don't believe in work-life balance. I don't do, for some of my clients, they need work-life balance. For me, the meaning of life, you were talking about the life world, the meaning of life. For me, the meaning of life, and it's boastful of me to say it, but I believe I know the answer.
Oh.
The answer is to spend as many of your heartbeats as possible trying to make your sphere of influence better using your best skill. I'll say it again because it's important. I'll say it in other words.
Yeah.
The meaning of life is not work-life balance or the pursuit of happiness. I could be happy having sex all day and eating gulab jamun all day and chicken tikka masala all day. But my life is meaningless. It's empty. I work as much as I can using my best skills, whether it's talking to you or a client or my podcast or writing articles or writing books. I can't fix anything. So when something breaks, I call the repair guy. I can't draw. So I have an artist in India, in Kolkata right now, who does beautiful watercolor illustrations for my books. I know what I can do and what I can't. And I spend relatively little. I'm married. I've been with my wife 49 years. But I work certainly 70 hours a week.
Wow.
And lest you say that's unhealthy, I'm 72 years old, and I think you can tell I'm nowhere near burned out. I'm as excited to see my next client as when I started, more so because I feel I'm pretty good at what I do. So I'm excited about it. So the other thing that I believe that most people don't is I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in spending as many of your heartbeats as possible, using your best abilities to make the world better. And that ends up not being stressful. And it's healthy because you're doing what you do best and you're being productive.
Interesting. That's a very, very valuable insight. In fact, the whole positive psychology school and the concept of flow. It's what you are good at. You are helping to work on that and helping other people. I think that summarizes the point.
Yes.
So great, Marty. It was an honor to talk with you, and it was interesting discussion. Hope to see you again in some of the specific podcast. And thank you, everybody. If people want to contact you, is there a website of yours?
Probably they certainly can Google me because then even more than I have a website with hundreds of my articles and stuff. But I have 1,500 YouTube videos. I have thousands of tweets. I love to create content.
And what is the how to contact you? Do you have your email ID?
Yeah. Let me just give my email address. And I am because I work so much, I do take the time to respond to everybody's email.
Yeah,
People don't realize it.
Yeah.
So it's M Nemko. That's MNEMKO at Comcast COMCAST.net.
Great. So those who are interested, they can contact you, and then probably you can take things forward. Thank you very much, Marty.